Israel's Gaza strategy, a turning point with global ripples. It's no longer a goal to negotiate with Hamas, not for a ceasefire, not for hostage exchanges. The Israeli leadership has clarified that rescuing hostages will only happen along the way, not as a priority. This marks a profound shift in the nation's war strategy, one that extends far beyond the initial objectives of dismantling Hamas and recovering those held captive. The Times' Gabriel Weinier, reporting from Israel, explains that while Prime Minister Netanyahu still claims his mission is to eradicate Hamas, the new operational plan suggests something broader and more permanent, a military reoccupation of the Gaza Strip. The more hawkish members of his cabinet have long pushed for this, and now the groundwork is being laid. The reality on the ground is stark. Civilians in Gaza are being told to move for their own protection, but there is no clarity on where they're meant to go. Israel has already cleared out the southern city of Rafah, reducing it to rubble. Currently, around 70% of Gaza is under Israeli control, part of a sweeping campaign that resumed mid-March after a 6-week ceasefire fell apart. With Hamas pulling out of negotiations, Israel has in effect been given free rein. For the families of Israeli hostages, this change is jarring. Once central to the war's mission, the hostages have now become a secondary concern, part of a vague possibility rather than a driving aim. There is no longer an intent to negotiate with Hamas or offer prisoner swaps. Instead, the hope is to rescue them along the way, a painful turn for the Israeli public to absorb. What makes this even more controversial is the indefinite occupation being proposed. Israel withdrew from Gaza years ago, and returning not just militarily but with a long-term presence signals a major shift in policy and posture. International reaction has been swift and critical, particularly from humanitarian organizations. Since early March, aid has been completely halted. Fuel, food, medicine, water, electricity all blocked. The humanitarian situation has reached breaking point. Some in the U.S., including former President Donald Trump, have made vague overtures to assist. But within Israel's government, many hardliners oppose allowing any aid into Gaza. Israel's solution? Outsourcing aid distribution, not to UNRWA, not to the World Food Program, and not to trusted NGOs, but to private security firms. These contractors, similar to those operating in the West Bank, would create a buffer between Israeli soldiers and Palestinian civilians. However, such setups are plagued by issues of accountability and abuse, as evidenced in the West Bank. Already, Israel has set up man-made checkpoints dividing Gaza into restricted corridors, Netzarim in the center and Morag in the south, further fragmenting a population already displaced and desperate. With Trump set to tour the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, but not Israel, some see Netanyahu's temporary pause before launching Operation Chariot of Gideon as a calculated gesture. Tens of thousands of Israeli reservists are being mobilized, but have not yet entered Gaza. There may be a narrow window for diplomacy, especially with Trump seeking to revive the Abraham Accords and build further normalization between Israel and Arab states. But optimism is hard to find. Hamas has accused Israel of deliberate starvation tactics and declared they won't resume negotiations in Qatar or Egypt. On top of this, aid agencies have flatly rejected Israel's new aid plan. The UN says warehouses are empty, bakeries are shut, and civilians are already starving, contrary to Israel's claims that supplies will last a few more weeks. Meanwhile, threats are mounting from beyond Gaza. A Houthi missile recently struck near Israel's main airport, prompting Israeli strikes on Yemen. Israel sees the Houthis not as isolated actors, but as proxies for Iran. The port of Hodeidah was reportedly destroyed in retaliation, a move meant to sever the Houthi supply line from Tehran. Israel's military campaign extends further to Syria and Lebanon. These aren't scattershot attacks. They reflect a unified strategy to counter Iranian influence across the region. By targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon and trying to prevent Iranian consolidation in post-Assad Syria, Israel is laying down a broader regional doctrine. So what might Gaza look like after the war, if it ever ends? It's already in ruins. With 70% of Gaza under Israeli control and as much as 90% of its infrastructure destroyed, the population is crammed into ever-shrinking safe zones that offer little actual safety. The international press has little access, so the world relies on local Palestinian journalists for glimpses of the devastation. Israel's own public is growing weary. Many reservists are reportedly refusing to return, not out of ideological opposition, but exhaustion, family obligations, or having already served 200 to 300 days. As a result, conscripts are being sent into Gaza, while reservists are being reassigned to other fronts in Lebanon, Syria, and the West Bank. The picture is bleak. In Gaza, civilians are starving and displaced. In Israel, soldiers and citizens alike are exhausted. Globally, diplomatic paths are narrowing, and hope for a sustainable resolution is fading fast. The next steps, military, diplomatic, or humanitarian, will have long-lasting consequences not just for the region, but for the world's understanding of this enduring and deeply complex conflict.